before the Duke of Westleigh entered Harrowden House. Helena Bellingham had already been warned not to look as though she belonged there. "You will pour the tea," Lady Millicent said, adjusting the fall of lace at her wrist while surveying the drawing room. "You will speak only if someone addresses you directly, and you will not mistake usefulness for invitation." Helena kept one hand upon the silver teapot and looked across the room at the three daughters being arranged for inspection. Lady Imogen, the eldest, had been placed nearest the fire, where the afternoon light warmed her pale complexion. Lady Diana occupied the chair beside the pianoforte, ready to display opinions on music. Lady Phoebe sat near the window with an embroidery frame she had not touched. Helena stood behind the tea table because there was no fourth chair. "I understand," she said. "Do you?" Imogen asked from before the tall mirror. "You have a habit of answering questions no one intended to ask." Helena crossed the room to fasten Imogen's black jet comb into her dark hair. One narrow prong had cracked during winter and been repaired with a fine coil of copper wire. The repair was neat, but Helena could feel the raised ridge beneath her fingertip. She pressed the comb gently into place, careful not to strain it. "Take care," Imogen said. "It came from Paris." "The case came from Paris," Helena replied. "The comb was carved in Whitby." Imogen met her eyes in the glass. "That is precisely the sort of correction Mama means." Helena withdrew her hand. "Then I shall try to protect everyone from geography." Diana concealed a laugh. Lady Millicent did not. "You are here because my husband took responsibility for you after your mother died," she said. "Gratitude should make a woman quieter." Helena glanced toward Phoebe, whose needle had caught in the silk because her fingers were trembling. Gratitude should not require deafness. The words escaped before caution could stop them. Lady Millicent's face hardened. "What did you say?" The drawing-room doors opened. The butler announced Matilda Fairbourne, Dowager Duchess of Westleigh, and Marcus Fairbourne, Duke of Westleigh. Everyone rose. Helena returned to the tea table before her aunt could answer. Marcus entered beside his mother with the controlled bearing of a man accustomed to rooms changing. When he crossed their thresholds, he was tall, broad through the shoulders, and dressed in a dark coat cut with military severity. A pale line near his right temple suggested an old wound. Nothing else in his appearance invited pity. Helena noticed the first unusual thing before he reached the carpet's center. The butler spoke behind Marcus's left shoulder, but Marcus did not turn. Matilda said something from his right, and he answered at once. Lady Millicent advanced with a smile polished by weeks of expectation. "Your Grace, Harrowden House is honored beyond expression." "Then I hope the visit does not prove less interesting than the anticipation," Marcus said. Matilda's mouth curved. Lady Millicent began the presentations. Imogen curtsied with flawless grace. Diana offered a remark about the opera. Phoebe caught the edge of her slipper in her gown and flushed when her mother gripped her wrist. Helena saw Millicent's fingers tighten. Marcus saw them too. His gaze rested on the hand until Lady Millicent released Phoebe. He said nothing. The silence was enough. Helena began pouring tea. Porcelain touched porcelain. Silk whispered across upholstery. Lady Millicent guided the conversation through accomplishments, connections, dowries, and the duties expected of a future duchess. Marcus sat with his right side angled toward the group. When Diana turned toward the pianoforte while speaking, his reply came a fraction late. When two voices overlapped, his attention moved to their mouths. A maid dropped a spoon against the brass stand to his left. Marcus gave no sign that he heard it. Helena felt an old recognition settle within her. Her mother had once watched faces with the same intense care, smiling when others smiled because she had missed the words that came before the laughter. Helena lowered her eyes. Pity could expose a person as thoroughly as cruelty. Lady Millicent leaned forward from Marcus's left just as a footman brought fresh hot water, and Diana began speaking across the clatter. "Your Grace, I should be fascinated to know whether you prefer a wife who excels in public society or one whose gifts are suited to the management of a great estate." Marcus turned, but no answer came. The pause lasted only a heartbeat. Helena shortened it without lifting her voice. "Lady Harrowden asks whether public grace or household judgment matters more in a duchess." Marcus looked at her. His eyes were grey, steady, and more perceptive than comfort allowed. "Thank you," he said. He adjusted his chair until his right ear faced Lady Millicent more directly. "I should hope a woman trusted with a great household understands that public grace without judgment is decoration." Diana's smile faded. Imogen's fingers tightened around her saucer. Helena continued pouring as though she had done nothing more than clarify who had requested lemon. "Helena has a habit of assisting where assistance is not required," Lady Millicent said. "Does she?" Marcus asked. "Constantly," Imogen replied. "It is how she makes herself useful." The insult was familiar enough to arrive quietly. That did not make it harmless. Helena reached for the cream jug. Phoebe glanced at the table. "Helena, you haven't poured your own cup." Lady Millicent silenced her with a look. Marcus noticed that as well. "Miss Helena?" he asked. The room became still. Lady Millicent laughed lightly. "My husband's niece, Your Grace. She resides with us." I had gathered she did not arrive with the tea service. Matilda lowered her gaze, though not before Helena saw amusement in it. Colour rose along Lady Millicent's throat. "Of course not. Helena is a dependent relation. She is fortunate to have a place in our household." Helena kept her hand steady. Marcus looked at the empty space beside the tea table, then at the footman near the door. "Take the pot," he said. The footman crossed the room at once. Marcus turned to Helena. "Please sit, Miss Bellingham." Lady Millicent opened her mouth. Marcus did not raise his voice, unless Harrowden House observes a custom by which a gentlewoman must stand while 3 others are displayed for inspection. No one answered. The footman placed an additional chair beside Matilda. Helena sat. The movement was small, but every person in the room registered it. Imogen turned her head sharply. The black jet comb gleamed in the candlelight, its copper-repaired prong still hidden and intact. Diana stared toward the pianoforte. Phoebe released a breath. Marcus waited until Helena had settled. "Do you always rescue conversations before they embarrass the people in them?" he asked. Helena met his gaze. "Only when the embarrassment serves no useful purpose. And when it does, then I try not to deprive it of its work." Matilda laughed softly. Marcus did not, though something changed at the corner of his mouth. "You have presented 3 daughters, Lady Harrowden," he said, still looking at Helena. "Yet the only woman who has told me anything true is the one pouring their tea." The words landed without force because force was unnecessary. Lady Millicent's expression became fixed. Imogen went pale beneath the warm firelight. Helena felt no triumph. She felt the danger of becoming visible in a room that had profited from her absence. The visit ended soon afterward. Marcus bowed to Lady Millicent, Edwin, and each of the 3 sisters. He stopped before Helena last. A calling card rested between 2 gloved fingers. "My next call won't be to inspect 3 candidates," he said quietly. "It will be to speak with you." Helena accepted the card. You may find that I'm less agreeable when I'm not holding a teapot. His gaze held hers. I'm depending upon it. He offered his right arm to Matilda and left without looking back. Only after the doors closed did Helena glance at the card in her hand. Every woman in the room was staring at her, but Imogen's expression held something colder than surprise. Helena had spent years believing invisibility was the worst fate Harrowden House could give her. In that moment, she understood that being seen might be far more dangerous. By 10 o'clock the following morning, Marcus Fairbourne's calling card had become the most closely watched object in Harrowden House. Lady Millicent had placed it upon the breakfast table as though it were a document requiring family interpretation. Imogen had examined it without touching it. Diana had asked whether the Duke's handwriting revealed anything of character. Phoebe had smiled until her mother noticed. Helena had said nothing. She had slept badly, not because she imagined herself in love after one afternoon, but because Marcus had looked at her as though silence and absence were not the same thing. That distinction had followed her through the night. "You will not encourage him," Lady Millicent said, while the footman removed the breakfast dishes. "I had not realized courtesy required a strategy." Helena folded her napkin. "Everything requires a strategy when a dukedom is involved. Then I am fortunate not to possess one." Imogen looked up. Her dark hair had been arranged without Helena's help, though the black jet comb remained secure, its copper-bound prong hidden and intact. "You think this amusing?" "No." Helena rose from the table. "I think it dangerous." The butler entered before Lady Millicent could reply. The Duke of Westleigh and the Dowager Duchess of Westleigh. The entire room changed. Lady Millicent moved toward the morning room with such speed that Diana had to gather her music sheets from the sofa. Imogen took the chair nearest the best light. Phoebe was given a volume of sermons and instructed not to slouch. Helena was placed near the window with a closed book in her lap and a warning glance from her aunt. Marcus entered beside his mother at 11:30. Edwin Bellingham appeared from his study only after hearing the announcement, his coat fastened with unusual haste. Marcus greeted the Earl and Countess, then acknowledged Imogen, Diana, and Phoebe with equal courtesy. His gaze found Helena last. "Miss Bellingham." "Your Grace." Matilda greeted Helena with enough warmth to make Lady Millicent's mouth tighten. "I hope we have not called at an inconvenient hour," Marcus said. "There could be no inconvenient hour for such distinguished company." Lady Millicent replied. "Imogen was only saying that she wished to ask your Grace about the exhibition at Somerset House." Imogen smiled. "I've heard the landscapes are unusually fine. Have you seen them?" Marcus asked. "Not yet." "Then we are equally qualified to judge them." Matilda lowered her face toward her reticule. Diana's lips twitched before she turned toward the pianoforte. Lady Millicent laughed as though the exchange had delighted her. Imogen has always possessed a keen appreciation of art. An appreciation that requires no exposure to the object itself is certainly efficient, Marcus said. Helena looked down at her closed book to hide the beginning of a smile. Tea arrived. This time a footman carried the pot and served every guest. Marcus noticed. He also noticed that Helena remained in the smallest chair, placed farthest from the conversational center. He accepted a cup, then sat with his right side angled toward the room. Lady Millicent attempted to draw Imogen nearer by asking her to show the Dowager Duchess a piece of embroidery. Matilda examined it kindly, but Marcus addressed Helena before Imogen could return to her place. "What are you reading?" Helena looked at the book in her lap. A collection of sermons, Your Grace. Are they improving? They are closed. Phoebe made a small sound into her cup. Matilda smiled openly. Marcus said, an honest review. It seemed kinder than pretending. Lady Millicent set down her saucer. Helena reads a great deal when there is nothing more useful requiring her attention. That must be rare, Marcus replied. Yesterday I was told usefulness was her principal occupation. Edwin shifted near the mantel. My niece has always been treated as one of the family. Marcus looked at him. That phrase can describe affection or convenience, my lord. It depends upon the family. Silence gathered. Helena felt Phoebe's eyes on her. Lady Millicent broke the moment by asking Diana to play. Diana moved at once to the pianoforte and began a familiar air. Marcus listened with his head inclined, his right ear turned toward the instrument. Helena saw the same concentration as the day before. When Lady Millicent spoke from his left across the music, he did not answer. Helena did not intervene. He had not asked. Diana finished with a flourish. Marcus thanked her. Lady Millicent praised her delicacy of touch. Then, said Imogen, also sang. Not before luncheon, Imogen replied quickly. A wise boundary, Marcus said. His attention returned to Helena. My mother tells me that you spent several years caring for your own mother. Helena looked toward Matilda, surprised. The Dowager Duchess gave a small nod. Lady Harrowden mentioned that you had lived quietly before coming here. I asked a few questions. Lady Millicent's expression suggested she considered the questions an intrusion. Helena rested both hands over the closed book. My mother became unwell when I was young. Her hearing diminished gradually afterward. Marcus went very still. Only Helena appeared to notice. Gradually, he asked. At first, she missed words when several people spoke together. Later, she relied more upon faces than voices. His gaze sharpened. And you learned to help her. I learned not to make every missed word into a public event. Something changed in Marcus's expression. It was not gratitude. Gratitude would have been simpler. You watched her closely, he said. She was my mother. That does not always guarantee attention. Lady Millicent lifted her cup. Helena was devoted, of course, but illness can encourage habits that are not always suitable in society. She observes people too closely. Helena met Marcus's eyes. People often call observation improper when they prefer not to be understood. Diana stopped arranging her music. Imogen's face remained composed, but the black jet comb caught a narrow shaft of light as she turned her head. Marcus rested one hand upon the head of his cane. Did your mother speak of what she needed? Not at first. She feared that every request would become proof she was burdensome. Helena remembered her mother sitting through dinners she could barely follow, nodding at the wrong moments because asking again had become more exhausting than ignorance. People raised their voices until kindness sounded like anger. Some answered for her before she had decided what to say. Others stopped asking her opinion because waiting required patience. Marcus looked toward the silent pianoforte. And what did you do? I stood where she could see me. I kept the lamps behind me when possible. I spoke clearly. When conversation became too tiring, we used a private alphabet with our hands. Lady Millicent gave a dismissive laugh. A childish household habit. Helena turned toward her. It allowed my mother to say no when everyone assumed silence meant yes. Phoebe lowered her gaze. Marcus looked at Helena with an attention that made the room feel smaller. Yesterday you spared me an awkward pause, he said. I spared the room one. There is a difference, a considerable one. He waited. Helena knew every person was listening. She also knew that evasion would be safer. I don't wish to be noticed because I made discomfort less visible, Your Grace. You believe that is why I returned. I believe powerful men are rarely required to distinguish gratitude from desire. The distinction should still be made. Edwin inhaled sharply. Lady Millicent said, "Helena." Marcus raised one finger without looking at her, and the reprimand ended before it began. He faced Helena directly. "Then allow me to be precise. I returned because you noticed a difficulty and protected it without attempting to own the person who possessed it. I returned because you told the truth when dishonesty would have cost you less. I returned because everyone in this room appears to have decided what you are, and you have not once begged them to reconsider." Helena kept her face still, though her breath had become shallow. "That is not gratitude," Marcus continued. "Nor is it yet desire, if the word means more than either of us can honestly claim after one afternoon. It is interest, serious interest." Matilda looked pleased. Phoebe looked near tears. Imogen's fingers closed around the edge of her chair. Helena said, "Serious interest can still become an experiment. Then you must tell me when it does. You assume I will be permitted to. I am permitting it now." Marcus reached inside his coat and withdrew a cream invitation card. He crossed the room and placed it directly into Helena's hand. "My mother is holding a reception at Westleigh House on Saturday. This invitation bears your name." Helena looked down. Miss Helena Bellingham had been written in a firm, elegant hand. Not companion to Lady Harrowden, not dependent relation, her own name. "I hope you'll come," Matilda said. Lady Millicent rose. "Naturally, Helena will accompany us if the family attends." Marcus turned toward her. "Miss Bellingham is invited as my mother's guest. Whether she attends is for her to decide." The room waited. Helena looked at Marcus. He had not promised rescue. He had offered a choice. "I will come," she said. Something softened in his expression, so briefly that she might have imagined it. "Good." When the visit ended, Matilda took Marcus's right arm. He paused at the door and glanced back. Not toward Imogen, whose beauty had been arranged for him. Not toward Diana beside the pianoforte. Not toward Phoebe with her unread sermons. He looked only at Helena. After the doors closed, Lady Millicent turned to her eldest daughter. "Imogen," she said, her voice low and controlled. "Curiosity must be redirected before it becomes attachment." By Saturday evening, Helena understood that being invited by name did not prevent a room from deciding what that name was worth. Westleigh House glowed beneath chandeliers and pale silk hangings, its drawing rooms filled with more than 30 guests who had all heard that the Duke of Westleigh had returned twice to Harrowden House and asked specifically for the Earl's dependent niece. Some looked at Helena with curiosity, some with amusement, a few with the cool calculation reserved for a woman who had entered a contest no one believed she had the right to join. Matilda Fairbourne met the Bellingham family at the entrance to the principal drawing room. She greeted Lady Millicent and Edwin with perfect courtesy, acknowledged Imogen, Diana, and Phoebe, then turned to Helena. "Miss Bellingham, I'm pleased you came." The simple emphasis upon her name altered the order in which everyone had expected to be received. Lady Millicent's smile tightened. Imogen's did not change at all, which was more revealing. Helena curtsied. "Thank you, Your Grace. Come sit with me when you've escaped your relations." Matilda moved on before Millicent could object. The reception was small by London standards, though every person present seemed determined to occupy more than the usual share of attention. A violinist prepared near the pianoforte. two matrons whispered behind feathered fans. Young ladies arranged themselves within Marcus's sight while pretending not to know where he stood. Helena remained beside Phoebe near a marble-topped table, grateful for one familiar face. Phoebe twisted the edge of her glove. "Mamma says I must speak to Lord Ashcombe if His Grace chooses Imogen." "Do you wish to speak to Lord Ashcombe?" Helena asked. Phoebe glanced toward a heavy gentleman with silver hair and a florid complexion. "He is nearly 50. That was not my question." Phoebe looked at her, then shook her head. "No." Helena touched the back of her hand. "Then do not mistake your mother's urgency for your own desire." Across the room, Marcus had been speaking with an elderly baroness. He turned before Helena withdrew her hand. His gaze moved from Phoebe's anxious face to Helena's. He had noticed the fear. He had also noticed who eased it. Lady Millicent followed his gaze and crossed the room with Imogen beside her. Imogen wore ivory silk, seed pearls, and the black jet comb Helena had fastened 2 mornings before. The copper-repaired prong remained intact, hidden within the dark arrangement of her hair. "Your Grace," Millicent said, "Imogen has been hoping to hear your opinion of Signor Bellini's performance." Marcus looked toward the musicians. "I am afraid Signor Bellini has not performed this evening." Imogen did not falter. "My mother means Herr Volkmann. His execution was very refined." "Was it?" Marcus asked. "Entirely, particularly the final variation." Helena glanced toward the violinist, who was still tuning and had not yet completed a single piece. Diana lowered her head to hide a smile. Marcus turned his right side slightly toward her. "Lady Diana, you disagree?" "Not at all, Your Grace." Color touched her cheeks. "I only thought my sister might have heard him rehearse." "There was no rehearsal," Phoebe whispered. Helena answered just as quietly. "No, Lady Millicent heard. Helena. Not every observation requires a voice." The nearest guests pretended not to listen. Marcus looked at Helena. Was Lady Imogen discussing a rehearsal? Helena met Imogen's cold stare before answering. "No, Your Grace." She was being agreeable. The Baroness beside Marcus coughed into her handkerchief. Matilda examined the clasp of her bracelet with suspicious concentration. Imogen's smile sharpened. "Helena has never understood that conversation need not be an examination." "Nor flattery a form of truth," Helena replied. The words emerged more firmly than she intended. A stillness opened between the cousins. Marcus ended it. "I prefer truth, even when it is inconvenient." His gaze remained on Helena long enough for Lady Millicent to step between them. "Imogen is truthful, Your Grace. She merely wished to express admiration for music that has not yet been played." His tone was mild. That made the correction more final. The violinist began at last, rescuing Lady Millicent from an answer. Guests shifted toward the chairs. Matilda beckoned Helena to sit beside her, leaving the 3 sisters together on the opposite side of the room. Marcus stood near the mantel, his right ear angled toward the music. Helena tried not to watch him. She failed. He listened with intense stillness, as though sound required labor rather than arriving freely, when a gentleman behind him whispered from the left. Marcus did not turn. When Matilda leaned toward his right during the applause, he answered immediately. Helena lowered her gaze before he caught her observing him again. The final notes faded. Conversation rose. Lady Winthrop, a silver-haired matron with the freedom of age and rank, approached Marcus. "Westleigh," she said, "half the room believes this evening was arranged so that you might choose among Harrowden's daughters. The other half believes you have already chosen. Which half is correct?" Laughter stirred through the nearest circle. Lady Millicent looked pleased. Imogen advanced by half a pace. Diana lifted her chin. Phoebe went pale. Helena remained beside Matilda, wishing the carpet offered some discreet means of disappearance. Marcus regarded Lady Winthrop. Neither half has been properly informed. Then inform us, she replied. London suffers terribly when denied a conclusion. The room changed before Marcus moved. Conversations thinned. Fans slowed. Even the violinist lowered his bow. Lady Millicent placed one guiding hand at Imogen's back. Helena saw the gesture and understood that the evening had been arranged for this instant. Imogen stepped forward with graceful certainty. Marcus did not move toward her. Instead, he crossed the drawing room. He passed Imogen first. The smallest fracture appeared in her composure. He passed Diana, whose lips parted. He passed Phoebe, though he gave her a look of quiet reassurance. Then he stopped before Helena. Every gaze in the room followed him. Miss Bellingham, he said, will you permit me to begin a formal courtship? The silence that followed was so complete that Helena heard the faint crackle of a candle wick. She had imagined many forms of humiliation in Harrowden House. She had never imagined that being chosen could expose her just as completely. Marcus waited. He did not reach for her hand. He did not soften the question into a command disguised as courtesy. Helena looked past him. Imogen's face had gone white. Lady Millicent seemed unable to breathe. Edwin stood near the doorway, with one hand pressed against his coat. Matilda watched Helena rather than her son. The choice was hers. That realization steadied her. May I ask you something first, Your Grace? You may ask me anything. Are you choosing me because I spared you embarrassment at Harrowden House? A murmur stirred and died. Marcus's gaze remained level. No, because I understood something others did not. No, Helena held his eyes. Then why? He answered without haste. Because before you knew I was watching, you eased Lady Phoebe's fear without making her feel weak. Because yesterday, when a footman nearly spilled tea, you corrected him quietly and thanked him before anyone could shame him. Because this evening you refused to praise music that had not been played, though agreement would have cost you less. Diana looked away. Marcus continued. You noticed my difficulty. That first drew my attention. What you did when no reward was possible held it. Helena's throat tightened. She would not let the room mistake emotion for surrender. You know very little of me. That is why I am asking for courtship, not marriage. And if what you learn displeases you, then I will tell you honestly. And if what I learn displeases me, warmth entered his expression, then I expect you'll do the same. Lady Millicent stepped forward. Helena is overwhelmed, Your Grace. She cannot possibly understand the consequences of answering before so many people. Marcus did not look away from Helena. I did not ask Lady Harrowden. The old instinct to make herself smaller rose within Helena. It had preserved peace for years. It had never preserved her. She drew one careful breath. Then yes, Your Grace, I will permit a courtship. The room exhaled. Marcus offered his hand, palm upward, but did not touch her until she chose to place her gloved fingers in his. He bowed over them without allowing his lips to meet the fabric. Thank you. Lady Winthrop laughed softly. Well, London has its conclusion. London has the beginning of one, Matilda corrected. Music resumed, but the evening did not recover its former shape. Marcus returned Helena to Matilda after only a few minutes, observing every propriety, yet the space between them no longer felt empty. Imogen passed close as guests rearranged themselves. He'll change his mind, she whispered. Men admire inconvenience only while it feels novel. Helena turned toward her. Then you need not fear me for long. Imogen's eyes sharpened. I don't. Near the doorway, Edwin drew Millicent aside. Their voices were low, but panic had stripped caution from his face. Rothwell's man came again, he said. He'll demand payment before the season ends. Millicent looked toward Helena, then toward Marcus beneath the chandelier. Then, we cannot allow the season to end with Westleigh still free to choose. 3 days after, Marcus asked to court her before half of London. Helena discovered that public interest could make even Hyde Park feel like a drawing room with no doors. Every carriage seemed to slow when the Westleigh equipage passed. Ladies lifted parasols by an inch. Gentlemen turned in their saddles. Helena sat opposite Marcus beneath a pale spring sky. Aware that her plain blue bonnet had received more inspection that afternoon than it had in the 3 years since she bought it, Matilda occupied the seat beside her son, close enough to satisfy propriety and gracious enough to study the riders along Rotten Row. Whenever silence became useful, Marcus had arranged himself with his right side toward Helena. The position appeared natural until one understood the care behind it. "You have been very quiet," he said. Helena looked toward a pair of young ladies in a neighboring carriage who had just pretended not to stare. "I am surrounded by people discussing me with their eyebrows." Matilda laughed. "Then London has discovered economy. Eyebrows require no paper." Marcus's mouth softened. "Does the attention trouble you? Not as much as the certainty with which strangers appear to know my intentions. They know mine even less. Your intentions have been announced in a crowded room. One of them has." Helena turned toward him. "And the others remain under investigation." "By whom?" "You, I hope." And the answer warmed her before caution returned. Courtship was not a promise. Attention was not devotion. Helena had learned too early that people could value what she did while remaining indifferent to who she was. Marcus watched her without pressing for a reply. The carriage moved beyond the thickest line of observers where the trees softened the noise from the road. Matilda greeted an elderly countess passing on horseback, then turned partly away to continue the exchange at a respectful distance. Marcus rested both gloved hands upon the head of his cane. "You have asked me several honest questions," he said. "There is one you have avoided. Perhaps I was saving it for a less public road. This is London. No road is private." Helena glanced at his face. "What question do you believe I avoided?" "What you noticed at Harrowden House." The sounds of the park seemed to separate around them. Hooves struck packed earth. Harness rings chimed. Somewhere behind the carriage, a child laughed. Helena looked toward Matilda. The Dowager Duchess remained within easy sight and hearing, but her attention was fixed upon the Countess. "I noticed that you prefer people to speak from your right," Helena said. Marcus's fingers tightened once around the cane. "Prefer? You turn that way even when someone stands directly before you. You watch mouths when several voices overlap. You did not react when the spoon fell to your left. You observed all of that in one afternoon." "I observed it. I did not catalogue you. There is a distinction. Observation leaves a person free. A catalogue is made for ownership. Something moved in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or discomfort." "And what conclusion did you reach?" he asked. "None that I had the right to make." "Yet you repeated Lady Harrowden's question. I thought you had not heard her. Why did you not expose the reason?" Helena met his eyes. "Because it was not mine to expose." Marcus looked toward the road ahead. For several moments he said nothing. The silence did not feel empty. It felt chosen. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. An artillery blast near Ciudad Rodrigo damaged my hearing on the left side. Helena did not move. The loss is severe, he continued. The ringing never entirely stopped. Some days it is faint. In crowded rooms it becomes louder than conversation. I hear well enough on the right, but music, applause, and overlapping voices make direction difficult. How long have you hidden it? Since I returned to England. From everyone. My mother knows. My valet knows. A physician knows. Several men who served with me guessed. His gaze sharpened upon the moving carriages. Society does not. Helena heard the restraint beneath the statement. You believe they would think less of you. Some would pity me. Others would arrange themselves around me until every choice became assistance. A few would decide that an injured ear had weakened my judgment. Has anyone done that already? Not knowingly. That was not my question. Marcus looked at her. No, not knowingly. Helena thought of her mother at dinner, smiling through remarks she had not heard, because the alternative was to ask again and watch the room become patient in the most humiliating way. My mother hated being shouted at, she said. People believed louder meant kinder. Marcus's face changed. You said her hearing diminished gradually after an illness. At first, she missed words when several people spoke. Later, even a quiet room became uncertain. And you adapted. We both did. Helena reached into her reticule and drew out a small square of folded linen. Time had softened its edges. When she opened it upon her palm, faded letters appeared beside simple stitched hand positions. Marcus leaned slightly nearer, but did not touch. She made this. We made it together. It is not a formal language. Only a family alphabet and a few signs for things we needed often. Helena traced the air above the stitches without pressing the cloth. Enough, tired, again, truth, home. Marcus's gaze rested upon the final word for a moment longer than the others. May I see? Helena held the linen where he could study it, keeping it in her own hand. The distinction mattered. He seemed to understand that without explanation. Teach me one, he said. Which? Again? Helena folded the sampler and returned it to her reticule before lifting her right hand. She touched two fingers lightly together, then turned them once toward herself. It meant repeat that. Marcus copied her. His movement was precise but too sharp. Like this? Almost. Helena demonstrated again, slower. The turn is smaller, he repeated it. This time the gesture was correct. Useful, he said. It can be. That sounded like a warning. It is one. The carriage passed beneath a deeper line of shade. Matilda's conversation with the Countess ended, but she looked deliberately toward a flowering chestnut tree, granting them another minute. Helena held Marcus's gaze. I will repeat something if you ask. I will stand where you hear me clearly when it is reasonable. I will not become a secret instrument whose purpose is to make you appear uninjured. The words remained between them, more intimate than reassurance. Marcus did not answer at once. You think I might ask that of you? Not deliberately. That is not a flattering distinction. Powerful people become accustomed to help arranging itself around them. They begin to call the arrangement natural. And you have spent too long being arranged. The accuracy of the sentence unsettled her. Yes. Marcus looked down at his hand, then formed the sign for again. If I use this, he said, it will mean I am asking, not commanding. And if I choose not to help, then you do not. Without anger, I may be frustrated with the missed words. I will not make that frustration your debt. Helena felt something guarded within her ease, though trust was too serious to be built from one promise. Still, a promise could reveal the shape of the man making it. Thank you, she said, for the sign. For the boundary, Matilda turned back toward them. Have I missed anything important? Only an argument, Marcus replied. Who won? Miss Bellingham. How reassuring. I had feared courtship might soften her. Helena laughed before she could prevent it. Marcus looked at her as though the sound had surprised him. Then movement across the lane drew her attention. The Harrowden carriage had come level on the opposite side. Lady Millicent sat rigid beneath a cream parasol. Diana leaned forward with open curiosity. Imogen sat nearest the window, the black jet comb secure in her dark hair, its copper-repaired prong still intact beneath the arrangement. Her gaze was not fixed upon Helena's face. It rested upon Marcus's hand. He had repeated the private sign unconsciously against the head of his cane. At that same moment, a mounted gentleman called a greeting from Marcus's left. Marcus did not turn until Matilda touched his sleeve. Imogen saw both things, the private gesture, the unguarded silence on his left side. Her eyes narrowed, not with understanding yet, but with calculation. Helena lowered her hand. Marcus followed her gaze toward the Harrowden carriage. But Imogen had already arranged her expression into polite indifference. Helena knew better. Something meant only to create trust between two people had just been observed by a woman who believed every weakness existed to be used. On the 17th of May 1817, Helena discovered that a charitable committee could become disorderly, with greater dignity than a ballroom and nearly the same amount of vanity. The long music room at Westleigh House had been arranged for a planning meeting concerning a benefit concert at the Hanover Square Rooms. The event was intended to support widows and children of wounded officers. Every person present approved of the cause. Nearly every person also wished to control the program, the seating, the ticket price, or the prominence of a family name upon the printed announcement. Marcus stood at the head of a polished table, with Matilda seated on his right. Helena occupied a chair farther down beside Lady Winthrop. Imogen sat opposite her in a cream walking dress, the black jet comb secured in her dark hair. The repaired prong remained intact, concealed beneath the arrangement. Diana had been given charge of a list she had not been asked to alter. Phoebe sorted subscription cards in silence. Lady Millicent observed the room with the fixed composure of a woman measuring every advantage. The committee secretary began reading the proposed order of music. He had not finished the opening selection before Sir Jasper Wren objected that it lacked grandeur. Lady Caddington interrupted to insist upon a fashionable soprano. A colonel's widow declared that singers increased the expense. Two gentlemen began speaking about ticket prices at the same time. Marcus listened with his right side angled toward the loudest voice. Helena saw his attention move from mouth to mouth. He did not appear helpless. He appeared tired before the meeting had truly begun. Lady Caddington addressed him from the left, just as Sir Jasper spoke from the right. Marcus answered Sir Jasper. Lady Caddington drew herself upright. I beg your pardon, Your Grace. I believe I was speaking. Several heads turned. Helena did not repeat the missed question. Marcus had not asked her to do so. Instead, she looked toward the secretary, who still held the unread program. Perhaps Mr. Pell might finish before objections are considered, she said. Then each concern could be heard in order. Sir Jasper frowned. We are not in Parliament, Miss Bellingham. That is fortunate, Helena replied. Otherwise, we might remain here until Michaelmas. Lady Winthrop laughed. The colonel's widow concealed a smile. Marcus looked at Helena across the table. She did not make their private sign. She did not rescue him. She waited. Miss Bellingham's suggestion is sensible, he said. Mr. Pell will finish the programmes. Sir Jasper may speak first afterward. Lady Caddington will follow. No one else will interrupt either of them. His tone was calm enough to make obedience feel like good breeding. The room settled. Mr. Pell resumed. Once the entire programme had been heard, objections proved less dramatic. Marcus rejected an expensive singer, retained the opening march, reduced the number of solo performances, and approved a ticket price that would not exclude officers' widows of modest means. Helena spoke only twice more. The first time, she pointed out that the most costly seats should not obscure the view of those who had paid less. The second, she suggested that subscription names be printed alphabetically rather than by rank, because the purpose of the concert was aid rather than competition. Lady Caddington objected to that with considerable feeling. Matilda supported Helena before the dispute could grow. Imogen leaned toward her while Mr. Pell gathered amended pages. "You arrange people very neatly," she murmured. "How fortunate for His Grace." Helena kept her gaze upon the subscription list. I arranged the conversation. "Is there a difference? A conversation does not belong to anyone." Imogen's smile thinned. "You are becoming confident for a woman whose place depends upon other people's patience." Helena looked at her then. "You mistake silence for uncertainty." Before Imogen could answer, Marcus addressed the committee. "The order that saved us an hour came from Miss Bellingham. Her judgment has also preserved the view of half the audience, and perhaps several friendships." A few patrons laughed. Others turned toward Helena with new consideration. The old instinct to make herself smaller rose within her. She let it pass. "I am pleased the suggestion was useful," she said. Marcus's gaze sharpened slightly at the word useful. But he did not challenge it before the meeting ended. Servants opened the doors to the adjoining drawing room, where tea and light refreshments waited. Matilda drew Lady Caddington into a discussion of patron lists. Lady Millicent attached herself to a duchess whose second son remained unmarried. Diana moved toward the pianoforte. Phoebe carried the subscription cards to Mr. Pell and received a quiet word of thanks that made her stand straighter. Helena paused near a window, grateful for one breath without debate. "Walk with me," Marcus said from her right. He indicated the open doorway to a small anteroom. Matilda remained visible through the arch, and 2 footmen stood beyond the tea table. Helena followed him. The anteroom held a narrow settee, a writing desk, and a tall vase filled with white lilacs. Marcus stopped beside the mantel rather than sitting. "You did not repeat Lady Caddington's question," he said. "No, you knew I had missed it. I suspected, yet you changed the structure of the room instead." Helena considered him. "You had not asked me to speak for you. Most people would have. Most people mistake immediate assistance for kindness." A faint line appeared between his brows. "And what would you call what you did?" "I asked the room to behave better. A more ambitious remedy. A more useful one." The word escaped again. Marcus noticed. "You return to usefulness whenever the conversation approaches you." Helena looked toward the open doorway. Matilda remained near enough to satisfy every rule. Imogen stood beyond her, watching over the rim of a teacup. "Usefulness is familiar," Helena said. "Familiarity is not the same as truth." Marcus rested one hand against the mantel. "What is the truth?" The question was quieter than the room deserved. Helena could have answered with practical wishes. A modest income. A chamber no one entered without knocking. Freedom from Lady Millicent's corrections. All were true. None reached the wound beneath them. I want a home where silence is not mistaken for agreement, she said, where being useful is not the price of being allowed to remain. Marcus did not move. Helena had expected sympathy. She would have known how to defend herself against sympathy. What appeared in his face was recognition. You should have had that already, he said. So should you. His gaze held hers. For one suspended moment, the room beyond the arch seemed farther away. Marcus could have promised her Westleigh House, rank, safety, or the life attached to his name. He did not. The restraint mattered. I must be careful, he said. Of what? Of deciding that because you understand me, I have understood you. Helena felt the answer settle somewhere guarded. That is unusually sensible for a duke. Do not spread it about. Your reputation would suffer beyond repair. The warmth between them deepened, but Marcus did not step closer. You told me in Hyde Park that assistance must be asked for, he said. Helena nodded. He raised 2 fingers near the head of his cane and made the private sign for again. I heard you, he said. I want you to say it once more. The gesture altered the meaning of repetition. He was not asking because sound had failed. He was asking because the words mattered. Helena drew a slow breath. I want to be chosen when I am not useful. Marcus lowered his hand. Something unguarded crossed his face, then vanished beneath restraint. Then I must be very careful how I choose you. From the larger room, Matilda called Helena's name and asked whether she preferred lemon cakes or almond biscuits. Helena turned toward the doorway. Lemon, she answered. A grave decision, Marcus said. I hope you will support it publicly. Helena smiled despite herself and returned to the drawing room. As she passed Imogen, she felt her cousin's gaze move from her face to Marcus's hand. The private sign had not escaped notice. Near the entrance hall, a footman presented Edwin with a folded note. Helena saw him break the seal. Color drained from his face. He drew Millicent behind a marble column, but urgency carried his whisper farther than caution intended. Rothwell's agent demands payment by the 1st of June. If we fail, every creditor in London will know. Millicent looked across the room toward Marcus, then toward Helena. Then we do not need a successful courtship, she said. We need a scandal that leaves Westleigh no honorable freedom to refuse us. On the 21st of May 1817. The Hanover Square rooms seemed determined to prove that noise could possess architecture. Violin strings tightened beneath impatient fingers. A cello groaned through repeated tuning. Chairs scraped across the floor, while footmen shifted rows by inches at the command of patrons who had arrived early enough to interfere. The conductor called for silence twice and received only a different arrangement of sound. Helena stood near the performance area with Matilda, watching Marcus confer with Sir Alwyn Mercer and the committee secretary. He kept his right side toward them. When another gentleman approached from the left, Marcus did not notice until the man stepped into view. Helena did not move toward him. He had not asked. Their private sign remained unused. Lady Millicent had brought all 3 daughters under the claim that they wished to assist. Imogen wore a cream walking dress and the black jet comb in her hair. The copper-repaired prong remained intact beneath the dark arrangement. Diana held a packet of programs without reading them. Phoebe sorted subscription cards near the side wall, her attention divided between the work in her hands and her mother's movements. Marcus bent over the proposed seating plan while the conductor explained a change to the opening piece. Sir Alwyn said something that Helena could not hear. Marcus looked across the room toward her before answering. My choice is settled. The words were quiet, intended for Sir Alwyn and Matilda. Imogen, passing behind Matilda with a music list, heard them. Helena saw the instant recognition in her face. It vanished almost at once. Imogen lowered her gaze and continued walking. But she did not go far. The conductor called for an applause test so the musicians could judge how long the room carried sound. Several patrons clapped. Others joined with more enthusiasm than necessary. Noise rose beneath the chandeliers and returned from every hard surface. Marcus turned his right side toward the conductor. Imogen approached from his left. She moved slowly enough to appear accidental and stopped just behind his shoulder. "Your Grace," she said. Marcus did not turn. Imogen's eyes narrowed. She stepped half a pace forward until she entered his field of vision. Only then did he acknowledge her. "Lady Imogen." I wondered whether the front row should be moved nearer the musicians. No. His answer was courteous and final. Imogen smiled. "Of course." She withdrew, but not before looking once at the left side of his face. Helena had watched the entire exchange. The private sign in Hyde Park, the missed greeting from the mounted gentleman. Now, this deliberate test beneath applause. Imogen did not yet know the history of Marcus's injury, but she had learned where sound failed him. Helena crossed toward Marcus only after the applause ended. "You appear troubled," he said. She positioned herself where he could see her clearly. "Imogen approached from your left while the room was loud." Marcus glanced toward his cousin by courtship, not kinship, then back at Helena. "Did she say anything unusual?" "No, that is what troubles me." Matilda joined them. "What did you see?" Helena described the test without claiming more. Marcus's expression hardened. She may have been seeking attention. "She was measuring something," Helena said. "I don't know what." Matilda looked toward Lady Millicent, who stood near the rear screen speaking to Lady Caddington. "Then we shall watch what she measures next." The rehearsal continued. A soprano tested the room with a bright ascending phrase. The horns entered too soon. A row of chairs tilted sideways after one footman caught a leg beneath the carpet. No one was injured, but the crash drew every head except Marcus's until Helena saw him register the movement rather than the sound. He looked toward her. This time, he lifted 2 fingers near the head of his cane and formed the sign for again. Helena came close enough to speak without making a display. "The conductor says the second piece will begin after a shorter pause." "Thank you." The exchange lasted only seconds. Imogen saw it from beside the pianoforte. Millicent followed her daughter's gaze. Helena felt the scrutiny move across the room like a draft. When the rehearsal finally paused, Marcus was drawn aside by Sir Jasper and the conductor. Matilda went with him. Helena carried a revised patron list toward the committee secretary and passed behind a folding screen near the far wall. Voices reached her from the other side. Lady Millicent spoke first, low and controlled. His left, Helena stopped. Imogen answered, but a violinist tested a phrase nearby and swallowed half the words. Then Millicent again. "If he speaks of his choice." Another chair scraped. Diana said, "But how will anyone know?" Millicent replied. "The room will hear what it expects." Helena stood very still. She could not see their faces through the screen. She could not hear enough to know the complete plan. The words suggested a manufactured misunderstanding, perhaps nothing more, yet Millicent's tone held intention, not speculation. Ella stepped away before she could be discovered listening. She did not see Phoebe on the opposite side of the screen, hidden behind a stack of unused programs. Phoebe stood much closer to her mother. She heard every word. During the applause, Millicent said, You will go to his left, Imogen. He did not turn for you just now. He will not hear you approach then, Diana whispered. And what am I supposed to say? If he speaks of his choice, you will confirm that he addressed your sister. But I may not hear whom he means. Precisely. Imogen's voice came calm and clear. His Grace has asked me to become his wife. Who pleased? Millicent said. Again surprise, not triumph. Imogen repeated the sentence more softly. His Grace has asked me to become his wife. Phoebe's fingers tightened around the programs. One slid toward the floor. She caught it before it struck. For an instant, she considered stepping around the screen and calling Helena's name. Then Millicent said, Phoebe. The single word froze her. Where are the blue-marked programs? Phoebe looked toward the stack in her hands. Here, Mama, bring them. She obeyed. When Helena found Marcus again near the side corridor, Matilda remained within sight. The rehearsal room was still noisy, but the corridor offered enough quiet for direct conversation. I heard something, Helena said. Marcus turned his right side toward her. What? Lady Millicent said his left. Then, if he speaks of his choice, she told Diana that the room would hear what it expects. Marcus's face became still. Did you hear more? No. I don't know what they intend. Matilda joined them. Helena repeated the fragments. She did not improve them. She did not claim certainty. Marcus looked back toward the main room, where Imogen stood beneath the chandeliers with her mother. They may mean to create a public misunderstanding. That is what I fear, Helena said. Then we do not give them the opportunity, Matilda replied. Marcus considered the room. At the concert, I will remain beside Sir Alwyn when the applause begins. You will be with me. And Helena? Matilda asked. Marcus looked at her. Helena will not be made my guard. The answer mattered. The aisle must remain clear, he continued. 2 Westleigh footmen will stand near the front row. No one approaches unseen. Helena felt some of the tension ease. You believe that will be enough? No, Marcus said. I believe it will make their intention harder to execute. And if they try another method, then we answer what happens, not what we fear. His restraint steadied her. He was not dismissing the danger. He was refusing to let suspicion become accusation without proof. Across the room, Millicent watched Matilda speak with Lady Caddington. A moment later, she drew the lady aside and murmured something that made Lady Caddington's expression sharpen with offense. Diana crossed toward Helena and asked whether Phoebe looked unwell. Helena glanced at the youngest sister. Phoebe was pale, but whether from fear or fatigue, Helena could not tell. She should sit, Helena said. Diana's gaze flickered toward Millicent. Perhaps you should remain near her during the concert. The suggestion sounded kind. That made Helena distrust it. Late in the afternoon, as servants extinguished unnecessary candles and gathered music, Phoebe entered the ladies' dressing room to retrieve her bonnet. Imogen stood before the mirror while her maid adjusted the black jet comb. The repaired prong remained intact. Millicent closed the door. Once more, she said. Imogen met her own reflection. His Grace has asked me to become his wife. This time, she sounded astonished enough to be believed. Phoebe remained hidden, behind the inner curtain, one hand pressed to her mouth, knowing exactly what would happen if she stayed silent and still unable to make herself speak. On the 23rd of May, 1817, Helena entered the Hanover Square rooms, knowing that something had been prepared against them and not knowing its shape. That uncertainty was worse than a direct threat. A threat could be faced. A shadow could only be watched. The public salon glittered beneath chandeliers, mirrors, uniforms, pearls, and the polished attention of London society. The benefit concert had drawn every patron whose name appeared upon the subscription list, along with several who had declined to contribute but had no objection to being seen. Marcus stood near the front row beside Sir Alwyn Mercer, exactly as arranged. Matilda remained close enough to reach him before the applause. 2 Westleigh footmen had been placed near the aisle. Helena should have felt reassured. Instead, she noticed how carefully Lady Millicent appeared not to observe any of them. Imogen wore white silk and the black jet comb, its copper-repaired prong still intact beneath the dark arrangement of her hair. Diana stayed near Phoebe, who looked pale despite the warmth of the room. "Are you unwell?" Helena asked her. Phoebe glanced toward her mother. "I'm only tired." Her fingers closed around her program. "Helena, Lady Millicent called her name before she could continue. Phoebe flinched and moved away. Marcus crossed toward Helena when the musicians began taking their places. He positioned himself where he could see her face. "Your warning has not been forgotten," he said. "Nor has your refusal to make me your guard," Helena replied. "You are not required to watch every person who approaches me." "I know. Do you?" His gaze softened for a moment. "I am learning." Helena looked toward Imogen. "She tested your left side at rehearsal, and she will find less opportunity tonight, unless the opportunity takes another form. Then we answer what happens." Marcus offered his hand. Helena placed her gloved fingers in it, only long enough to feel the steadiness beneath his restraint. "You are not alone in the room," he said. "Neither are you." Matilda approached and separated them with the ease of a chaperone who understood that propriety need not become punishment. The first piece began. Strings and horns filled the high room with martial dignity. Marcus sat with his right ear angled toward the musicians. Helena remained beside Matilda, while the Bellingham sisters occupied the row behind. During the quieter passages, Helena felt Imogen's attention fixed upon the back of her neck. She did not turn. The final movement gathered speed, then ended in a bright, sustained chord. The audience rose before the conductor fully lowered his baton. Applause struck the ceiling and returned twice as loud. Every precaution failed within seconds, not through chance, but design. Lady Caddington hurried toward Matilda with outrage sharpened in her face. "Your Grace, I have been placed behind Lady Wrexham after giving twice her subscription. Someone has made a public insult of it." Matilda looked toward the seating list. "That cannot have been intentional." "Lady Harrowden assured me the arrangement came from your table." Matilda's expression hardened. She turned to answer, moving 3 steps from Marcus. At the same moment, Diana seized Helena's wrist. "Phoebe is going to faint." Helena looked back. Phoebe had gone white and was gripping the chair before her. The distress was real, whatever purpose Diana had attached to it. Helena moved toward her. A footman, carrying a tray of lemonade, stepped into the aisle. Another servant clipped the tray from behind. Glasses tilted, liquid spilled, and the Westleigh footman nearest Marcus turned to prevent the crash from reaching an elderly lady. The path closed. Helena understood too late. Sir Alwyn had leaned toward Marcus from the right. His words vanished beneath applause, but Marcus heard enough to answer. His gaze moved across the room and found Helena beside Phoebe. Sir Alwyn followed it, smiled, and asked the question again near Marcus's right ear. "Your choice is settled, then?" Marcus replied. "My choice is settled, sir." Imogen moved at once. She slipped past the disordered tray and approached Marcus from the left. Her white skirts made no sound beneath the applause. Helena saw her draw near, saw the black jet comb pass beside the gold braid on Marcus' left shoulder, and saw Imogen's head catch for one sharp instant. The repaired prong snagged, bent, and broke. Imogen pulled free without looking back. Marcus did not turn. He had not heard her approach. She stepped around him, faced the room, and pressed one hand to her breast. "His Grace has asked me to become his wife," the applause faltered. Confusion moved faster than silence. Lady Millicent gave a cry of astonished joy. Edwin appeared beside her. Diana lifted both hands to her mouth. Phoebe went motionless. Marcus turned toward Imogen only after the announcement. "I have done no such thing." His denial cut through the remaining sound. Imogen's expression changed from triumph to wounded disbelief with frightening ease. "Your Grace, I did not ask you to marry me," Lady Millicent advanced. "Westleigh, surely you cannot mean to deny what half the room has heard." Half the room heard applause. "We heard you declare that your choice was settled," Edwin said. "Sir Alwyn heard me say it to him." Sir Alwyn stepped forward. "That is true." Millicent did not retreat. "Lady Imogen stood beside you." Lady Diana heard the words. Every face turned toward Diana. Helena saw the terror beneath her sisterly loyalty. Diana swallowed. "I heard His Grace say his choice was settled." Marcus faced her fully, giving her no refuge in ambiguity. "Did you hear me address your sister?" Diana's gaze flickered toward Millicent. "She was beside you." "That was not my question. I believed you meant her." It was not the lie Millicent had rehearsed, but it was enough to feed uncertainty. Imogen lowered her eyes. "I would never invent such a thing. I have risked my honor merely by speaking." "You risked it by making the claim," Marcus said. Helena reached them as the room began dividing itself into factions. Some looked at Imogen with pity. Others watched Marcus with unease. More than one gaze turned toward Helena with suspicion already forming. Imogen saw it and changed her attack. "Perhaps you regret what you said, because Miss Bellingham is here." Marcus's expression became dangerous in its stillness. "Take care. I'm trying to understand. She has stood at your better side since the day you met. She has repeated what others say. She has made herself indispensable. The cruelty of the accusation was not that it was entirely false. It was that it twisted care into control and understanding into ambition." Murmurs moved through the salon. A woman behind Helena whispered that dependent relations learned quickly where power was weakest. Helena felt the words land, but she did not turn. Marcus stepped between her and the Bellinghams. "No one has made herself indispensable to me." "Then why did you choose her?" Imogen asked. "Because the choice was mine." Helena looked at Marcus. His anger would not be enough. Rank would not be enough. The room had heard the phrase and seen Imogen beside him. Facts had been placed against appearances, and appearances had already begun to win. "Did you say those words?" Helena asked. Marcus turned toward her. Pain entered his face because he understood why she had to ask publicly. "Yes." The room stirred. Helena held his gaze. "To whom? Not to Lady Imogen." "No." Imogen gave a small, broken laugh. "How convenient." Marcus faced the room. "I deny the proposal now. I will deny it before any witness Lady Imogen chooses. I did not speak to her. I did not ask for her hand." Lady Millicent lifted her chin. "And what becomes of my daughter's honor? It would have been safer had she not built it upon words addressed to another man." Matilda returned to Marcus's side. Having understood at last why Lady Caddington's grievance had arrived at that exact moment. "My carriage will take Miss Bellingham home," she said. Helena looked at her. "Not to Harrowden House." Matilda understood without asking. To To Westleigh House, then, if you choose. Helena nodded. Marcus offered his arm. She did not take it. Hurt crossed his face before he concealed it. You do not believe me, he said quietly. I believe you did not propose to her. Then, what do you need? Helena looked around the room where truth had been broken into whatever shape society preferred. Facts that cannot be bent by applause. Marcus released a slow breath. You shall have them. That night at Westleigh House, his valet removed the dark concert coat and found a narrow black fragment caught deep in the gold braid of the left shoulder. One end was wrapped in a fine coil of copper wire. The valet placed it inside folded paper, marked the date, the coat, and the exact location where it had been found, then carried the packet to Marcus. Marcus examined the fragment without recognition. Across London, Imogen sat before her mirror while her maid loosened her hair. The black jet comb lay upon the dressing table with one repaired prong missing. By noon on the 24th of May 1817, London had improved the lie. What began as a false proposal beneath applause had become, in 3 drawing rooms and 1 hastily copied society letter, a story of calculated dependence. According to the account delivered to Westleigh House, Helena had discovered the Duke of Westleigh's private difficulty, placed herself always at his favoured side, repeated what he missed, and gradually persuaded him that gratitude was affection. Imogen, meanwhile, had been named the woman Marcus truly chose before Helena's influence confused his judgment. The cruelty of the story lay in its elegance. It did not accuse Helena of stealing jewels, letters, or money. It accused her of stealing a man's will. Helena read the copied letter in Matilda's morning room, while rain marked the windows with fine silver lines. She had slept in a guest chamber at Westleigh House after refusing to return to Harrowden House. Her borrowed morning gown belonged to no disguise. Matilda had offered protection, and Helena had accepted it. That choice already felt like a declaration. Marcus stood near the writing desk, the folded denial he had prepared resting beneath one hand. His expression remained controlled, but the skin beside his temple had drawn tight. The phrase "favoured side" appears twice, Helena said. No one outside Harrowden House used it last night. Matilda lowered her cup. Then your aunt's hand is in this, whether or not she held the pen. Marcus looked at Helena. My denial will go out before luncheon. What does it say? That I did not propose to Lady Imogen, that my words were addressed to Sir Alwyn, that you have never directed my choices. Helena looked toward the sealed sheet. And the rest, if necessary, I will disclose it. Your hearing? Yes. The answer came too quickly. Helena felt pain move through her, not because he was willing to speak, but because he was prepared to make the wound payment for her name. No. Marcus became still. No, you will not expose something you have guarded for years, because Lady Millicent has made me the target of it. They have made your character dependent upon my silence. Then we challenge what can be challenged without, turning your injury into a ransom. His hand tightened against the desk. I won't allow you to bear this alone. You are not allowing it. It has already happened. Then let me end it. Not in anger, not from guilt. Helena faced him fully. Would you tell London today if my name were not attached to the lie? Marcus did not answer. The silence was answer enough. Matilda rose and moved toward the windows, giving them privacy without leaving the room. Marcus lowered his voice. Every hour we wait, the story travels. Then send the denial. Sir Alwyn can confirm the words were addressed to him. Your mother knew I warned you of a planned misunderstanding. Those are facts. Society will ask why Imogen approached from my left. Let them ask, and if they prefer her explanation. Helena drew a slow breath. Then I will still know I did not purchase my reputation by forcing open a part of you that was not mine to reveal. Something in his face altered. You speak as though disclosure would be a defeat. No, I speak as though choice matters, even for a duke. Before Marcus could respond, the butler entered with a card upon a salver. Edwin Bellingham and Lady Millicent were waiting below. They had brought the Harrowden carriage and requested Helena's immediate return. Matilda's expression cooled, request denied. Helena placed the copied gossip letter upon the table. No, let them come up. Marcus looked at her. You owe them nothing. I owe myself the chance to refuse them where they can hear me. Edwin entered first, grave and stiff. Millicent followed with outrage arranged beneath composure. Neither acknowledged the hospitality that allowed them into the room. Helena, Edwin said, you will gather your things and come home. My things remain at Harrowden House, Helena replied. That does not make it home. Millicent's eyes flashed. You have spent one night beneath this roof and already speak as though your family were beneath consideration. You made my name a weapon before breakfast. We did nothing of the sort. Helena lifted the copied account. The phrase favoured side came from your household. London notices what it wishes to notice. London did not know where to look until someone pointed. Edwin stepped forward. Enough. Your continued presence here confirms every malicious suspicion. My return would confirm that I am ashamed. You should be concerned with preserving what remains of your reputation. I am. That is why I will not place it again in the hands that damaged it. Millicent turned toward Marcus. Your Grace, surely you understand how this appears. A dependent young woman spends the night under the roof of the man whose proposal to another lady she helped deny. Matilda answered before Marcus could. Miss Bellingham slept in my house under my protection. Her maid remained with her. Every propriety was observed. Society may not be so generous. Society is rarely generous, Helena said. That is not the same as being correct. Edwin's face hardened. You are still dependent upon me. Not today. The words were quiet. They changed the room. Her Grace offered me shelter. I accepted it. I will not return to Harrowden House while Lady Millicent circulates accusations against me. I forbid this, Millicent said. Helena looked at her. You may forbid your daughters. You cannot forbid me from leaving the place where my silence was treated as consent. Phoebe's frightened face rose in Helena's memory. For one moment, regret touched her. Then she remembered Imogen's practiced expression beneath the chandeliers and Millicent's false astonishment. Edwin seemed to understand that command had failed. Your clothes will be sent, he said. Send only what belongs to me. Everything you possess was provided by this family. My mother's linen and books were not. His gaze flickered. Helena saw that he remembered the small locked trunk stored in the attic. Those will be sent, he said. Millicent turned away first. At the door, she looked back at Helena. You believe the Duke's interest makes you safe? No, Helena replied. I believe my choices are mine. After they left, Marcus said nothing for several seconds. Helena realized her hands were trembling. She closed them together. He did not reach for her. The restraint felt more protective than touch. That afternoon, Matilda's reception proceeded as planned. Several women arrived out of curiosity, sharpened by scandal. Helena entered on Matilda's arm. Conversation softened, then resumed with false ease. Lady Caddington, approached with concern, arranged delicately upon her face. Miss Bellingham, How brave of you to appear. I had not understood that walking into a room required bravery, not ordinarily, but after such confusion. There is no confusion in my mind. Lady Caddington lowered her voice. People say you have been of unusual assistance to His Grace. Helena felt Marcus come to stand nearby, but she did not look at him. People say many things when facts inconvenience them. Did you help him choose you? The question was gentle enough to pretend innocence. Helena answered clearly. His Grace's choices are his own. Mine are mine. Marcus spoke before the room could fill the silence. No one has ever spoken or chosen for me. His voice carried without strain. He disclosed nothing more. Helena understood what that restraint cost him. The reception continued. She answered honest questions and refused dishonest ones. She did not retreat. When the last caller departed, exhaustion settled behind her eyes. Marcus approached with a folded paper packet in his hand. My valet found this in the gold braid at my left shoulder. Helena did not touch it. What is inside? A black fragment wrapped at one end with copper wire. He marked the date, the coat, and where he found it. Memory sharpened. Imogen before the mirror. The ridge beneath Helena's fingertip. The black jet comb missing from her hair in the gossip accounts telling. Marcus held the packet out, but Helena looked toward Matilda. It should not remain with me. Marcus understood. He placed it in his mother's hand. Matilda closed her fingers around it. I will secure private access to the Hanover Square rooms on the 28th, she said. Lady Winthrop will accompany us. Marcus looked at Helena. Why return there? Because words were bent in that room, she said. Positions may not be. His gaze held hers. Do you still believe I chose you freely? Helena thought of the sign, for again, his careful restraint, and the relief she had seen when he did not have to pretend. I believe you chose me, she said. I do not yet know whether you chose a woman or the ease she gave you. Pain crossed his face, but he did not defend himself. That is fair. It is not meant to be. Truth rarely asks permission to wound. Matilda carried the packet toward her locked escritoire. Helena watched it disappear inside. Somewhere across London, Imogen's damaged comb lay hidden in a dressing case. For the first time since the concert, the lie had left behind something solid enough to follow. On the 28th May 1817, Helena returned to the Hanover Square rooms beneath a sky the colour of tarnished silver, accompanied by Matilda Fairbourne and Lady Winthrop. Marcus did not come. Helena had asked him to remain away, not because she doubted him, but because a duke's presence could bend recollection before anyone intended it. If servants and musicians remembered the room, she wanted them to remember it, without first looking toward the man whose rank might tell them what answer was safest. As Matilda's carriage drew up, a footman handed Helena a folded note. Marcus's hand was firm and spare. I trust your judgment. I will not enter the room merely because my name is at its center. Helena read the line twice, then placed the note inside her reticule beside her mother's linen sampler. The Hanover Square salon looked smaller in daylight, without candles, uniforms, and music. The polished floor and high mirrors seemed almost embarrassed by the drama they had contained. Dust moved in pale shafts above the empty chairs. The conductor waited near the pianoforte with a retained program and seating plan. A young footman stood near the side aisle, twisting one glove in his hands. Matilda carried the dated paper packet in her reticule. She had kept it inside her locked escritoire since Marcus placed it in her care. We require accuracy, she told the conductor, not loyalty. Relief passed over his face. Then I can be useful, Your Grace. Helena almost smiled at the word. "Begin with the end of the first piece," she said. The conductor placed the seating plan upon a music stand, but did not surrender it. His Grace stood here beside the front row. Sir Alwyn Mercer approached from the right. The applause began before I lowered my baton. "How long did it continue?" Helena asked. "Nearly half a minute." The walls returned sound very strongly. Could ordinary speech be heard clearly? At close range, perhaps. Direction would have been difficult. From several places away, impossible. Helena moved to the position where she had stood beside Phoebe. The aisle between them and Marcus had seemed narrow that night. In daylight, she saw how easily 3 bodies and a fallen tray could close it. Lady Winthrop examined the marked seats. "Lady Caddington came to me before the music," she said. She was already offended about being placed behind Lady Wrexham. "Did you know who told her the arrangement came from Her Grace?" Helena asked. "Lady Harrowden." Matilda's expression cooled. "The arrangement did not come from me." "No," Lady Winthrop said. "It came from the secretary's working list. Lady Caddington had been moved because she arrived late with 2 additional guests." The conductor nodded. "That is correct." Helena looked at Matilda. The grievance had not appeared by chance. Millicent had taken an ordinary seating inconvenience and sharpened it into an insult timed to remove Marcus's mother from his side. The young footman was called forward. "Your name?" Helena asked. "Thomas Reed, miss. You are not accused of anything. Tell us what you remember." His shoulders eased by a fraction. I was stationed near the front aisle. When the applause started, a servant carrying lemonade stepped across from the side. Another man struck the tray from behind. "Accidentally?" Lady Winthrop asked. Thomas hesitated. "I thought so at first. But the second man was not one of ours. I did not know his livery." "What did he do afterward?" Helena asked. "He moved away before the glasses fell. I turned to keep them from an elderly lady's gown." "And Lady Imogen?" "She passed behind me while I was turned." Thomas looked toward the place Marcus had stood. She came from his left. "How close?" "Close enough that her hair caught against the braid on his shoulder. I saw her head pull back." Matilda's fingers closed around her reticule. Did his Grace turn toward her? Not until she faced the room and spoke. Helena did not ask Thomas to interpret what that meant. "Did you hear the Duke address Lady Imogen before her announcement?" "No, miss. I heard him speaking to Sir Alwyn, but not the words." "Thank you." Thomas stepped back. Lady Winthrop glanced at Helena. "You are very determined not to improve your own evidence. Improved evidence becomes another lie." The conductor lowered his gaze in approval. Matilda removed the paper packet and placed it upon the pianoforte. The valet's notation remained visible across the fold. Date: dark concert coat, gold braid at left shoulder. Matilda opened it while Lady Winthrop, the conductor, and Helena watched. A narrow black fragment rested inside, no longer than the upper joint of Helena's smallest finger. Fine copper wire still bound one end. For one moment, the room receded. Helena saw Imogen seated before the mirror on the 7th of May, warning her to take care with a comb she claimed came from Paris. She remembered the slight ridge beneath her fingertip. She remembered the same black jet ornament at the rehearsal, intact beneath Imogen's dark hair. "I know what this resembles," Helena said. Matilda did not touch the fragment. "Tell us only what you know." "Lady Imogen owns a black jet hair comb. One prong had cracked and was bound with fine copper wire. I felt the repair when I fastened it into her hair on the 7th of May. I saw the comb again at rehearsal on the 21st. The repaired prong was still present." The conductor leaned closer. Then this is the missing piece. Helena forced herself to remain precise. I believe it may be. I cannot prove that without the comb. What does the fragment prove now? Lady Winthrop asked. That something made of black jet, repaired with copper wire, caught in the gold braid at his Grace's left shoulder. It supports Thomas's account that Lady Imogen stood very close to him. It does not, by itself, prove she planned the announcement. Matilda looked at her for a long moment. Most people would claim more. Most people did claim more. That is why we are here. The fragment was returned to the packet. Matilda resealed it with her personal wafer, wrote 28th May across the fold, and placed it back inside her reticule. The program and seating plan remained with the conductor. Nothing changed hands without being seen. Outside, rain had begun as a fine mist over Hanover Square. In the carriage, Lady Winthrop said, "You have evidence of position, sound, and interference. What you still lack is intention." Helena looked at the wet glass. Then intention must come from someone who heard it. They had barely returned to Westleigh House when the butler entered the drawing-room. "Your Grace, Lady Phoebe Bellingham has arrived." Matilda turned. "With Lady Harrowden?" "No, Your Grace. She came with her maid and asks to speak without her mother present." Phoebe entered moments later, her bonnet ribbons damp and her face pale from fear. Her maid remained near the open door. Marcus was not in the room. Helena was grateful. Phoebe should not have to speak first, beneath the gaze of the man whose name had been used. "Sit," Matilda said gently. Phoebe obeyed, though she perched on the edge of the chair. Her hands shook in her lap. Helena took the seat opposite. "Tell us only what you heard," she said, "not what you think it means." Phoebe swallowed. "At rehearsal, Mamma took Imogen and Diana behind the screen. You were on the other side, but I was closer. Mamma told Imogen to stand on his Grace's left during the applause because he would not hear her approach." Helena felt the last uncertainty become cold. Phoebe continued. She said that if he spoke of his choice, Diana must say he meant Imogen. Then Imogen practiced saying he had asked her to become his wife. Matilda's face hardened. "Did your father take part?" "I did not hear Papa behind the screen." "Did your mother explain why the seating complaint would matter?" Helena asked. Phoebe nodded. "She said Lady Caddington would keep her Grace occupied. Diana was to bring you to me by saying I felt faint." Shame flooded her face. "I did feel faint. I knew what they intended, and I still said nothing." Helena did not offer easy absolution. "Your fear explains your silence. It does not make the silence harmless." Tears gathered in Phoebe's eyes. "I know." "Will you repeat this before your mother?" Matilda asked. Phoebe looked toward the open doorway. "I don't know if I can do it without shaking." Helena leaned forward. "Shaking does not make the truth less true." Phoebe met her gaze. For the first time since entering, she sat straighter. "Then yes," she said, "I will." Matilda reached for the bell. Diana must be invited here without Lady Harrowden in the room. Phoebe closed her eyes briefly. She knows what Mamma told her to say. She may deny it. Helena thought of Diana's frightened answer at the concert. Then she will have to choose which fear she intends to live with. Outside, the rain strengthened against the windows. Inside Matilda's reticule, the copper-wrapped fragment remained sealed. At Harrowden House, the broken comb remained hidden. Between them now stood something more dangerous than either object, a sister who had finally decided to speak. Diana arrived at Westleigh House on the morning of the 29th May, with anger arranged over fear and no mother beside her to direct either one. Matilda had sent a carriage and made it clear that Lady Millicent would not be received. Diana entered the smaller sitting room to find Helena, Phoebe, and the Dowager Duchess waiting. Marcus remained in the adjoining chamber, visible through the open doors, but far enough away that Diana would not feel examined by the man she had helped accuse. The arrangement was deliberate, so was the silence. Diana looked first at Phoebe. "You told them." Phoebe did not lower her eyes. "I told them what I heard. Mama will never forgive you." She did not ask forgiveness from Helena. The answer struck harder because Phoebe spoke without heat. Diana's composure shifted. Matilda indicated a chair. "Sit, Lady Diana." Diana obeyed. She clasped her hands in her lap, then released them when she noticed the gesture made her look frightened. "I have nothing to add," she said. Helena watched her carefully. "At the concert, did you hear His Grace say that his choice was settled?" "Yes." "Did you hear him speak your sister's name?" Diana hesitated. "No." "Did you hear him ask Imogen to marry him?" "No." "Then what did you actually know?" Diana looked toward Phoebe, whose face still carried the cost of having spoken. "Mama told me that if he said anything about his choice, I was to confirm that he meant Imogen." "Did you believe that was true?" Helena asked. "I thought it might be." "That is not certainty." No, the word barely reached the room. Diana drew a breath. "I heard the sentence. I saw Imogen beside him. I knew Mama expected me to support her. I also knew what would happen if I did not." "What would happen?" Matilda asked. "She would say I had destroyed the family for Helena's sake. Papa's creditors would come. Phoebe would be married to whoever offered help. Imogen would blame me for losing Westleigh." Her voice sharpened. "You speak as though fear makes choices easy." Helena answered without cruelty. "No, I speak as though fear does not make them harmless." Diana looked away. "I did not know about his hearing." "You did not need to know," Phoebe said. "You only needed to know you had not heard a proposal." Diana flinched. A long silence followed. When she spoke again, the anger had gone. "I was a coward." No one contradicted her. "Will you retract your statement?" Helena asked. Diana's fingers tightened. "If I do, Mama will never receive me warmly again. That may be true, and Imogen will hate me. That may also be true." Diana lifted her face. "You won't promise it will be easy." "No," Helena held her gaze. "Only that the truth becomes harder to recover each time someone delays it." Diana looked at Phoebe. Her younger sister's hands were trembling, but she sat upright. Something in Diana changed. Not courage all at once, but the beginning of shame turned in a useful direction. "Then I will retract it," she said, "privately first, publicly when required." Matilda nodded. "That will be required." The following morning, Edwin and Lady Millicent arrived at Westleigh House with Imogen and Mrs. Bell, Imogen's maid. Marcus received them in the formal morning room. Helena sat beside Matilda. Phoebe remained under the Dowager Duchess' protection for the meeting, while Diana occupied a chair near the window, pale but resolved. Imogen wore her hair plainly. The absence of the black jet comb was louder than ornament. Mrs. Bell stood behind her mistress with both hands folded. Matilda addressed the maid first. "Mrs. Bell, did you repair a black jet comb belonging to Lady Imogen?" Mrs. Bell glanced toward Millicent. Marcus spoke before the Countess could intervene. "Answer the Dowager Duchess." "Yes, Your Grace." "Describe the repair," Matilda said. "One prong cracked after Christmas. I bound it with fine copper wire because the jet wouldn't hold glue." "Was it intact before the rehearsal on the 21st May?" "Yes, and after the concert." The maid's face tightened. "The comb came back missing that prong." Imogen rose. "This is absurd. A broken ornament proves nothing." Helena answered evenly. "Not by itself." "Then why am I here?" Because no single fact carries the whole truth, Helena said. But facts may support one another. Millicent gave a cold laugh. Listen to her, a dependent niece, speaking as though she were counsel in a court. Matilda's gaze settled upon her. No court is needed to determine whether your daughter manufactured a proposal in my son's name. Edwin stepped forward. Where is the alleged fragment? Secure, Matilda replied. It will remain separate until the full account is given publicly. Imogen's face lost a degree of colour. Marcus looked at her. Where is the comb? I do not know. Mrs. Bell inhaled. Everyone heard it. Matilda turned to her. Do you? The maid swallowed. It is in Lady Imogen's dressing case at Harrowden House. Millicent's expression hardened. You forget who pays your wages. Mrs. Bell lowered her eyes. Helena spoke before fear silenced her. Truth does not belong to the person who pays for the room in which it is spoken. Edwin stared at Helena, then at the surrounding witnesses. You cannot send servants searching through my daughter's chamber. Then, send your own servant, Marcus said. A Westleigh footman will accompany him. The case will remain locked until it returns. Edwin recognized that refusal would become its own answer. He gave the order. The journey between the two Mayfair houses required little time. Within the hour, a Bellingham servant returned carrying the locked dressing case, followed by a Westleigh footman who confirmed it had not been opened. Imogen held the key. For several seconds, she did not move. Marcus's voice remained quiet. If you refuse, Lady Imogen, every person here will understand that you have chosen concealment. Her fingers trembled once as she unlocked the case. Beneath folded ribbons and gloves lay the black jet comb. One prong was missing. A faint coil of copper remained around the broken base. No one touched it at first. Mrs. Bell identified the repair. Matilda then lifted the comb by its undamaged edge, placed it inside a small box, closed the lid, and bound it with ribbon. She pressed her seal into the wax and wrote the date across the fastening. The fragment packet remained separately secured in her escritoire. Imogen stared at the sealed box. It proves only that my hair caught his coat. It proves you stood close against his left shoulder, Helena said. Phoebe's account proves the announcement was rehearsed. Diana's statement proves the corroboration was coached. The conductor and footman establish noise, position, and interference. Your maid confirms the repair. The fragment and comb may confirm the contact. No one fact is enough. Together, they describe what happened. Edwin looked older than he had the day before. He asked to speak with Helena near the far window, still within sight of Marcus and Matilda. This need not become public, he said in a low voice. I can settle £200 a year upon you, a respectable residence outside London. Your mother's belongings returned without dispute. You would never depend upon us again. Helena looked at the man who had called dependence affection whenever it excused control. In exchange for what? Silence. You withdraw the accusation. Westleigh withdraws the denial. Imogen's future remains possible. And my name? Society forgets. Society does not forget a woman it has enjoyed condemning. Edwin lowered his voice further. Think carefully. This is security. Helena heard the number for what it was. A price placed upon the years she had endured, the lie told against her, and the truth they wanted buried. No, she said. You refuse an income you may never see elsewhere. I refuse to let you purchase the right to decide what happened to me. His face hardened. You may regret pride. This is not pride. It is ownership of my own name. She returned to the others. Millicent saw the answer before Edwin spoke. Her courtesy vanished. You would ruin your cousins. Helena faced her. You were willing to ruin me to preserve them. The Bellinghams left without farewell. Diana remained behind. Phoebe did too. When the doors closed, Marcus looked at Helena. Do you still want the world kept ignorant of my hearing? She met his gaze. I will not reveal your wound for you. That was not my question. Helena held the silence until he was ready to hear the whole answer. No, she said, I will not help you hide from it anymore. On the 2nd of June 1817, the quiet sitting room at Westleigh House contained no music, no overlapping voices, and no excuse for either of them to misunderstand the other. Matilda sat in the adjoining chamber with the connecting doors open, close enough to satisfy propriety and far enough to grant them honesty. Helena stood beside the window, one hand resting upon the curtain edge. Marcus remained near the unlit hearth. He had arranged the chairs so that his right side would naturally face her, then seemed to realize what he had done and moved one chair back into place. Helena noticed. She noticed everything. That was part of the difficulty between them. You asked whether I wished the world to remain ignorant of your hearing, she said. I answered no. Marcus inclined his head. You also said you would not help me hide from it. Yes, I have spent 2 days deciding whether that angered me. Did it? At first. His honesty struck more deeply than reassurance would have done. And now? Now I think the anger belonged to shame, not to you. Helena looked down at her hands. The investigation had established what happened in the Hanover Square rooms. It had not answered the question beneath every act of protection Marcus offered. There is something I must know before the public correction, she said. Ask, not as a duke. I cannot remove the title. Then answer as the man who remains when the room is empty. Marcus's expression sharpened. Helena drew a steadying breath. If this room were always quiet, if every person spoke where you could hear, if you never needed me to repeat a word, would you still choose me? He did not answer immediately. The delay hurt, but Helena refused to rescue him from it. You believe I chose relief, he said at last. I believe relief can resemble devotion when a person has lived without it. That is not an answer. No, Helena held his gaze. Then answer me. Marcus crossed the room, but stopped at a respectful distance. I would choose you because you protected Phoebe before you knew anyone important was watching. I would choose you because you refused to speak for me, even when doing so might have made yourself necessary. I would choose you because your uncle offered you security in exchange for silence, and you preferred uncertainty to surrendering your own name. Helena's throat tightened. He did not list every kindness she had performed. He did not praise her usefulness. He named choices that had cost her something. Those things tell you what I have done, she said, not what life with me would be. Then I will tell you what I want from that life. His voice lowered. If tomorrow I woke with perfect hearing, I would still want to hear what you think. I would still look for you. When a room became dishonest, I would still want the woman who corrects geography and refuses to praise music that has not been played. A reluctant warmth touched her, despite the seriousness of the moment. Those are dangerous domestic qualities. I have survived artillery. I may endure accuracy. The brief humor passed. Marcus looked toward the open doors, where Matilda turned a page without pretending she could not hear them. I have not been fair to you, he said. You have asked nothing of me that I did not choose to give. I let you believe restraint came naturally. Helena waited. He continued. Sometimes I answer before I have heard enough, because asking again makes me feel watched. Sometimes I become impatient when the fault is mine, Then let another person carry that impatience. At dinners, I have allowed my mother to repeat a question without acknowledging why. In crowded rooms, I withdraw and call it boredom, because fatigue feels too much like weakness. His mouth tightened. There are days when the ringing is so persistent that kindness itself becomes difficult to bear. Helena did not tell him none of that mattered. It mattered because it would live with them. And what would you expect from a wife on those days, she asked. That is what frightens me. The days, the expectation. Marcus looked directly at her. I could begin by asking for help and end by believing you owed it. I could turn your understanding into a duty so gradually that neither of us recognized the moment it became a prison. Helena felt the truth of it. He had power enough to make even a gentle need become law within a household. Then we would have to name it before it did, she said. Would you? Yes, even if naming it angered me. Especially then. Marcus released a breath that seemed held for years. Could you love a man who misses words, resents the effort of asking for them, and sometimes mistakes pride for dignity? Helena looked at the pale line near his temple, the controlled shoulders, and the right hand resting too firmly against the back of a chair. I could love such a man. Hope moved across his face. She did not let it become an easy promise. I could not love him if he made me keeper of the silence that protects him. Marcus absorbed the condition without looking away. You would not be, not by intention, then by structure. He glanced around the room as though seeing Westleigh House differently. My valet should not have to conceal which side he approaches. My household should know how to address me without turning the matter into ceremony. My mother should not bear the work in public while pretending she is not doing it, and you should never be required to stand at my right, so others may believe I hear equally well from both sides. Helena had not expected him to move so quickly from confession to change. That is more than a statement at the concert. It must be, otherwise the statement is performance. He came one step closer. I will disclose the injury on the 5th. Because my reputation requires it? No. The answer was immediate. Your reputation requires the evidence. My disclosure explains how the deception succeeded. But I will speak because I am tired of letting shame decide who may know me. Helena studied his face for any trace of sacrifice offered in exchange for gratitude. She found fear instead, fear and decision. Then I must speak before you, she said. Marcus's brow lifted. Why? Because if the room hears your confession first, it may decide I am innocent only because you are injured. I will not be acquitted by pity directed at you. You are right. You agree very quickly. I am learning to survive accuracy. Helena's hand moved toward her reticule. She drew out the folded linen sampler and opened it upon her palm. The faded stitches had softened with years of use. Marcus watched her trace one small arrangement of fingers. This one means truth, she said. She demonstrated slowly. Marcus copied her, but his thumb crossed too far. Again, he said aloud. Helena showed him once more. This time, the gesture was correct. Truth, he said. Not confession. Truth can be offered freely. Confession often waits for accusation. Then truth. He made the sign again, slower than before. Helena folded the sampler and returned it to her reticule. When Marcus extended his hand, he did not take hers. He waited. Helena placed her fingers into his. The contact was brief, restrained, and more intimate than any embrace could have been. From the adjoining room, Matilda closed her book. Now that you have both finished saying things that will make the rest of us seem emotionally lazy, we must decide how to gather the people who heard the lie. The practical interruption released the tension without diminishing it. They moved into the next room, where Matilda had prepared a list of principal patrons, witnesses, and members of the Bellingham family. The notice described the gathering as a correction of a public falsehood, not an inquiry and not a trial. Sir Alwyn, Lady Winthrop, the conductor, Thomas Reed, Mrs. Bell, Diana, and Phoebe would attend. The sealed fragment packet and sealed comb box would remain in Matilda's custody until then. Lady Millicent may refuse, Helena said. She will not, Matilda replied. Refusal would leave Imogen's claim unanswered in her absence. Marcus wrote the invitation to Edwin himself. By evening, the reply arrived. Edwin accepted for the family. Beneath his name, Imogen had added a line in her own hand. I will attend to defend the honor his grace has chosen to injure. Marcus read it once. Helena watched the muscle in his jaw tighten. Then he lifted his hand and formed the sign for truth. The movement was precise. It did not hide that his fingers trembled. Helena understood then that he no longer feared the room learning. He had been wounded. He feared the room, seeing the man who had built his pride around concealing it. On the 5th of June 1817, the Hanover Square rooms filled again with many of the same people who had watched a lie take shape beneath applause. This time, no one could pretend the evening was merely musical. The first half of the concert proceeded beneath a tension more disciplined than silence. Marcus sat near the front with his right ear toward the musicians. When the conductor's announcement was obscured by movement behind him, Marcus lifted 2 fingers and made the sign for again. The conductor repeated himself without surprise. A few guests noticed. Marcus did not look away. Hella saw the moment for what it was. He had begun telling the truth before speaking a word about his injury. During the interval, Matilda invited the principal patrons and every person connected to the scandal into the public salon adjoining the concert room. No tables were arranged like a tribunal. No one was seated above another. The sealed box containing Imogen's comb rested beside Matilda. The packet holding the copper-wrapped fragment remained separately secured, a personal wafer still unbroken across the fold. The conductor held his own retained program and seating plan. Lady Millicent stood beside Edwin and Imogen as though family unity might outlast evidence. Diana remained several steps away from them. Phoebe stood near Helena, pale but upright. Matilda addressed the room. A false account was spoken here and repeated throughout London. Tonight it will be corrected where it began. Then she stepped back. Helena felt every gaze settle upon her. Marcus had promised she would speak first. He kept that promise by remaining silent. His Grace did say the words, "My choice is settled." Helena began. A murmur moved through the salon. The question has never been whether he spoke them. The question is whom he addressed, what occurred around him, and whether Lady Imogen's announcement had been prepared in advance. Sir Alwyn moved forward of his own accord. I asked Westleigh whether his choice regarding Miss Bellingham was settled. He answered me. Lady Imogen was not part of that conversation. Imogen lifted her chin. You saw me near him, after he answered. The conductor opened the seating plan upon a music stand. Sir Alwyn stood on his Grace's right. Lady Imogen approached from the left. The applause was loud enough to obscure direction. Thomas Reed stepped from the wall. His voice shook at first, then steadied. I saw Lady Imogen pass from his Grace's, left while I was turned by the falling tray. Her hair caught against the gold braid on his left shoulder. He did not turn until she faced the room. Lady Winthrop spoke next. Lady Caddington drew the Dowager Duchess away over a seating grievance. Lady Harrowden had told her the arrangement came from her Grace, though it did not. Millicent's composure tightened. An error in seating is hardly conspiracy. No, Helena said. Not alone. Phoebe moved before her mother could stop her. It was not alone. Millicent turned. Phoebe, be silent. Phoebe's hands trembled, but she did not obey. At rehearsal, Mamma told Imogen to stand on his Grace's left during applause because he would not hear her approach. She said if he spoke of his choice, Diana must claim he meant Imogen. Then Imogen practiced saying, "His Grace has asked me to become his wife." Imogen's face went white. You misunderstood. You repeated it until Mamma said you sounded surprised enough. A jest, Millicent said. A foolish family jest. Phoebe looked at her mother. Then why did you tell Diana what to say after it happened? Diana stepped forward before fear could reclaim her. She did. Imogen stared at her. Diana's voice cracked, but she continued. I heard his Grace say his choice was settled. I did not hear him address Imogen. I did not hear a proposal. Mamma told me to confirm that he meant her. I did it because I was afraid. Coward? Imogen said. Diana flinched. Yes, I was. I won't remain one for your sake. Mrs. Bell stood beside the wall, wringing her hands. Matilda turned to her. Describe the comb. Black jet, Your Grace. One prong had cracked. I bound it with fine copper wire. It was whole before the concert and missing afterward. Matilda lifted the sealed box. This seal has remained unbroken since the comb was surrendered on the 30th of May. She showed the wax to Lady Winthrop and Sir Alwyn, then opened it. The black jet comb lay inside with one repaired prong missing. She raised the separate packet. This wafer is my own. I sealed it on the 28th of May after the fragment was examined before witnesses. Marcus's valet stepped forward and opened the packet. The narrow black piece fell into his gloved palm, copper wire still wrapped around one end. Matilda placed the comb near it. The break matched without force. No one spoke. Helena looked at Imogen. The fragment does not prove every part of the plan by itself. It proves you stood against his Grace's left shoulder at the exact moment you claimed he had addressed you. The rehearsed sentence, the coached corroboration, the planned distraction. And the position complete what the fragment cannot. Imogen's restraint broke. You arranged all this because you knew how to make him depend on you. You stand where he hears. You repeat what he misses. You have turned his weakness into your power. Marcus moved then. He came to stand beside Helena, not before her. My left ear was permanently damaged by an artillery blast near Ciudad Rodrigo, he said. The room became utterly still. The hearing loss is severe. The ringing has never ceased. I hear on the right. In music, applause, and overlapping conversation, I may not hear a person approach from my left. That is why Lady Imogen's deception succeeded for a moment. It is not why I chose Miss Bellingham. His gaze moved across the room without apology. I concealed the injury because I feared pity, interference, and doubt regarding my judgment. That concealment created a space Lady Harrowden exploited. The fault for my shame is mine. The false proposal is not. Millicent drew herself upright. I acted to protect my daughters from ruin. Helena faced her. You used one woman's honor to purchase security for another. That is not protection. It is possession. Edwin looked around at patrons who had once courted his favor and now avoided his eyes. Marcus addressed him. You will send written corrections to every person who received the false account. House Fairbourne will offer no introductions, patronage, or social support to Harrowden while this deception remains unanswered. He turned to Millicent and Imogen. Neither of you will be received at Westleigh House." Imogen's face hardened with disbelief. "You would destroy my future for one mistake. You manufactured a proposal before society and called its denial an injury to your honor. Your future will now answer to the truth." Diana lowered her head. "I will retract my statement wherever it was repeated." Marcus nodded once. Matilda looked toward Phoebe. "Lady Phoebe may remain under my protection if she wishes." Millicent objected at once. "She is my daughter, and I am not offering to remove her without consent," Matilda replied. Every gaze turned to Edwin. He seemed to understand that refusal would reveal the same control that had produced the scandal. "She may stay," he said hoarsely. "I will confirm it in writing." Phoebe closed her eyes for one brief moment. Relief moved through her so quietly that only Helena noticed. The correction ended without applause. No one had earned celebration from what pain required. As the room began to separate, Marcus turned to Helena. "May I continue to court you?" The question was simple and public, but not possessive. Helena looked at the man who had spoken of his wound without making it the center of her vindication. "Yes," she said, "you may." When the second half of the concert began, Matilda seated Helena on her right. Marcus sat beyond Helena, his right ear turned toward the musicians. His left side remained visible to the room, no longer guarded by pretense. During the final applause, he did not smile, as though he had heard every sound. He looked toward Helena instead. She raised her hand and made the sign for truth. Marcus answered with the same sign, slowly and openly. No one called Helena dependent. No one asked her to pour tea. The room gave her something more difficult than admiration. It gave her silence without erasure. In the 6 weeks after the second concert, truth proved less dramatic than scandal and far more demanding. Edwin Bellingham sent written corrections to every correspondent who had received the false account. Some replies expressed surprise. Others expressed sympathy with such eagerness that Helena suspected disappointment lay beneath it. Harrowden House reduced its London household before the end of June. Lady Millicent and Imogen withdrew from the season, officially because Imogen's health required country air. No one believed it. Diana visited the drawing rooms where she had repeated or allowed the lie to stand. She did not ask Helena to accompany her. She did not ask to be praised for correcting what she had helped damage. Each visit cost her something, and she paid it without complaint. Phoebe remained at Westleigh House with her own maid after Edwin's written consent arrived. The letter was brief, but it was enough to make Matilda's protection lawful as well as kind. Phoebe still startled when a door opened sharply. She still looked toward Helena before expressing an opinion. Yet she began to speak before fear had finished asking permission. Marcus changed in quieter ways. At dinner, when a guest addressed him from the left, he asked the man to repeat the remark instead of pretending to understand. If several people spoke at once, he stopped the conversation and said plainly that he could not follow it. He instructed his household to approach within sight whenever possible, then refused to allow the arrangement to become ceremony. He no longer expected Helena to occupy his right side. Sometimes she stood there because it was convenient. Sometimes she did not. The choice remained visible between them, and because it remained a choice, it became tenderness rather than duty. Their courtship continued beneath Matilda's careful approval. Marcus brought Helena no extravagant jewels. He brought her a new edition of a book they had argued about, and admitted that her criticism had improved his opinion of it. Helena did not manage his correspondence, his invitations, or his household. He asked her judgment, then made his own decisions. When he disagreed, he said so. When she disagreed, she did not soften the fact to protect his pride. Near the end of June, Marcus's solicitor met with a solicitor engaged solely for Helena. The maternal funds that remained from her mother were placed under trustees for Helena's separate use. The principal would be protected, and the income paid directly for her benefit. Marcus did not call the protections unnecessary. He did not suggest that love made safeguards insulting. Affection is not a substitute for structure, he said. When Helena questioned whether the provisions offended him, "If I expect you to trust my character, I should not require you to depend upon it alone." The answer moved her more deeply than any declaration delivered beneath chandeliers. In the first week of July, Marcus asked Helena to join him in the morning room at Westleigh House. Matilda sat in the adjoining chamber with the doors open, occupied with correspondence and making no attempt to disguise her attention. Helena entered, expecting another discussion of the settlement. Instead, she found Marcus standing beside the same chair he had once moved, so that his right side faced her naturally. This time, he had left it where it belonged. He held no ring box, no flowers waited upon the table. The absence of display steadied her. "I have considered several speeches," he said. "They all sounded as though I were addressing Parliament. That would be unfortunate. I have no intention of sitting through a division." His mouth warmed. Then seriousness returned. "Helena, will you marry a man who may miss words, resent the effort of asking for them, and sometimes require reminding that pride is not the same as dignity?" "That sounds familiar. It should. I have had the advantage of your accuracy." He came one step nearer. "I cannot promise never to fail at what we agreed. I can promise not to make your silence the price of peace. I can promise that no service you perform will purchase your place in my home. I can promise to choose you when you are helpful, when you are inconvenient, when you are tired, and when you are entirely unwilling to arrange a room for my comfort." Helena's eyes burned. "You have made inconvenience sound almost romantic. In your case, it is devastating." He drew a breath. "I love you. Not because you make the world easier to hear, because you make it harder to lie." Helena looked at the man who had first noticed her behind a tea table and later trusted her enough to let an entire room see the wound he had hidden. "Then yes," she said, "I will marry you." Marcus did not seize her hand. He offered his own. Helena placed her fingers in it. Only then did he bend and press his lips to her glove. From the adjoining room, Matilda said, "I assume I may now order luncheon before both of you perish from emotional restraint." The banns were read on 3 successive Sundays. At St. George's, Hanover Square, in the final week of July, the vicar had been told privately that Marcus heard best on his right. He arranged the couple. So Helena stood where her vows would reach him clearly without announcement or fuss. Phoebe cried before the service began and made no effort to hide it. Diana attended in pale blue, quiet and composed. Edwin was permitted to come. He sat apart from his daughters and did not perform the tenderness of a father who had earned forgiveness. Lady Millicent and Imogen remained absent. When Helena spoke her vows, Marcus watched her face and heard every word. When he spoke his voice faltered only once. Helena did not rescue him from the pause. She waited. He continued. Outside the church, society gathered behind smiles, fans, and curiosity. The same people who had once watched Helena carry tea now watched her emerge as Duchess of Westleigh. No applause followed. None was needed. Marcus offered his arm, and Helena took it because she wished to. They walked toward the carriage at the same pace. He did not lead. She did not follow. In late August, after the London heat had softened, they travelled to Brackenhurst Hall in Hertfordshire. The journey required several hours and a pause to rest the horses. By afternoon, Matilda and Phoebe had joined them for a picnic upon a grassy rise overlooking the estate. The house stood beyond a line of old trees, solid without grandeur for its own sake. Matilda led Phoebe toward a distant view, remaining within sight, while granting the newly married pair a pocket of privacy. Helena sat beside Marcus upon the blanket, a silver tea service rested nearby, untouched. She opened her reticule and withdrew the linen sampler. Its edges were worn. The faded letters still held. Marcus looked at it with the solemnity of a man greeting an old ally. Another lesson? 1. Helena showed him the sign for home. He copied it and turned his hand too far. Wrong? Completely. A promising beginning. She demonstrated again. He repeated the gesture more slowly. What does home mean to you? He asked. Marcus looked toward Brackenhurst Hall. I would have said this house. Or Westleigh House. And now, he considered before answering, a place where no one must pretend to be less wounded, less intelligent, or less free in order to belong. Helena felt the words settle inside her with the quiet certainty she had wanted all her life. Then try again. Marcus made the sign once more. This time it was correct. Helena placed her hand over his. Behind them, the tea cooled upon the cloth. Forgotten by the woman who had once believed her place depended upon pouring it,